Ever wonder what is really made in the 757? Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. With me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead me at StartWheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. Marla Schuchman wondered that as well and launched Made in 757 to celebrate and help market local 757 businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marla. Hello.
Hey, Marla. Good to see you.
It's not cool anymore to like wave when you're on Zoom camera or when you're in a web chat, but whatever.
What are other Zoom protocols these days? Like you can't do that? You can't have like spirit fingers or anything like that? Like why?
Jazz hands. I don't know.
Jazz hands. So I met you back in what, 2012, 2013. You had moved here from, where did you move from immediately after that?
The last place I lived before here unofficially was DC, but that was 3 months. And then before that, it was Tel Aviv.
Did you meet Tim around that same time too, or when did you meet Tim?
I think I met Tim, in the fall of 2012, probably.
Yeah, it was all in preparation for the very first Start Peninsula.
Yeah.
Did you anticipate this being another layover city, or was this kind of going to be a permanent fit?
Let's see. So I came down to Start Peninsula in November of 2012 on a visit.
So you didn't live here when that happened?
No, I came, got in touch with
Tom.
Tom, thank you. Sorry, Tom.
How many hands can we have in a day?
Got in touch with Tom because my aunt clipped out a newspaper article that was talking about Start Peninsula, and she sent me the actual clipping. People don't do that anymore.
I was going to say, I was thinking about that on my run this morning, because I'm like, we're in year 9 of Start Peninsula, and I'm like, to this day, that still might be the only thing that converted from print media into anything.
I have that from Start Norfolk as well, where someone saw it in the newspaper. I don't know if they cut it out, but they saw it in the physical.
Yeah, well, my aunt actually sent me a newspaper clipping in an envelope, and she was like, "Isn't this what you do?" And so I contacted Tom, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be visiting for Thanksgiving. Can I help? This is what I do. I work with startups, and I'm coming from Tel Aviv. I just lived there, for a few years." And he was like, "Hey, do you want to judge?" It's like, "Sure. Okay." So, I was thinking like mentor or whatever, but he offered me to be one of I think there were 3 or 4 judges that first year. And it was awesome. It was great. And then small thing happened. I ended up meeting the guy who would become my husband. And so that's how I got stuck here. No, it was a few days after, I think.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I'm glad you brought it up, was about Tel Aviv. Looking back, and if you were to compare the startup scene from there to here and how our scene has progressed over the last 9 years, how do the two compare?
Oh, God, it's so different. Entrepreneurship in Tel Aviv is like, well, in Israel in general, it's just kind of woven into the fabric of the country because of the long history of companies coming out of Israel, out of this sort of, high-tech sector. The high-tech companies in Israel generally were founded by former military veterans who had worked in super secret or super high-tech military technologies, and they had this whole internal network, and they were connected with each other, and there was just a lot of really interesting companies that would come out of that, and they formed the backbone of the technology sector in Israel. And there's other tech as well besides military technology. There's a lot of agriculture technology because of the desert. And anyway, Israel is just a very interesting scene for technology. And so it feels very much like it's a tech town. Whereas coming to Hampton Roads, I was looking for it. It didn't like come into, it wasn't there to find.
That
Was
word
it
Waze is
Waze?
interesting.
Yeah.
Was it Waze?
Waze is an Israeli company, so is Wix. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So, with that, I mean, do you think I'll just jump right in. Do you think that our area is moving in the right direction, or do you?
Well, it's like,
What does
what's
it
the
take?
direction? I mean, that's something that I question. It's like, what does Hampton Roads want to be
Right.
when it grows up, or now, or whatever? What is a startup ecosystem for Hampton Roads? It has to be its own thing. It has to be unique. So I think since I've been here, I can't believe I'm coming up on, it'll be 9 years, or I've seen sort of a lot of the same things tried, but like repackaged with a different name. There's been momentum towards bringing people together who are working in this. So there's a lot more collaboration, a lot more connection between resources. I think everybody understands that you can't silo things, and you can't, keep like a competition to one particular city. For example, on the peninsula, right? That was a big deal to get all of the municipalities to sign that big MOU a few years ago that every city was contributing to the funding of Start Peninsula. And I don't know if that's still the case now, but that was a big deal. And that was something that I felt was like a huge milestone for this area.
Yeah, they just signed another 5-year extension to that. So that's great.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, even in Israel, that kind of thing didn't really happen, but there wasn't that, they didn't need it, right? It was because there was so many opportunities and so many people doing things that you didn't have to like provide those kinds of networked resources in the same way. Now, that's not to say there weren't already accelerators and incubators that were working together or collaborating or things like that. But by and large, I think my experience with Tel Aviv startups was there would be a couple of guy founders who were military veterans. There weren't many female founders that I met. I'm sure that's changed. I mean, I was a part of a women entrepreneur group, and there was a lot of people, but I would go to events and it would be primarily male. And it'd be two guys who knew each other from the Army. They were buddy, and they would sit in a cafe, grab their cappuccino and their laptops, and just like have at it.
And that's something that you don't see here. Is it because the types of, that people throw around, the military tourism port type of thing is that thing? I mean, is it just because, the word, like I jokingly say this, and sometimes I feel like it's true. Like before I came on the scene, I feel like the word startup was frowned upon, and then I made it popular in this area. And then now, over the last 10 years, people are like, oh, well, we don't know what to do now with that. I mean, are we literally from the ground zero building up that thing? I mean, it just seems like they're a lot more woven, established. Tel Aviv is like that. A lot of other cities are like that.
Yeah.
You use some word that's interesting. I can't remember what it was, but it's ingrained or something like that, where we have to be unique. That's what it was, right? And so, like, yeah. I feel like in every meeting I've ever been with the old white guys that are like, oh, we need to do this. I'm just like, yo, like, let's not do what San Francisco's doing. Let's not do what Omaha's doing. Let's not do what New York City's doing. That there's nothing unique about that. And it's interesting that I ended up writing a book about, called Anomaly, because I wasn't really thinking about that at the time, but you have to be unique, and that's what makes you unique. And so I've always thought it's interesting that tools that are being used in other cities or that were created in different cities weren't established here, even though we're military tourism port area. We should be the home of those things if those are the things that are there. So it's always
that was one of the first things I thought of when I came here on my first visit is why don't we have specific industries that we're really good at as our technology development sectors or as our startup sectors, right? Like I came here and I was like, why isn't there, can we do it? Can we create it like a nautical type, water thing, right? But that's happening now, right? That's happening now.
Yeah, like why is a Yelp not created here? Why, like some sort of like tourism-based thing? If tourism is such a big thing here, multi-billion-dollar market,
right?
Why are you then technology-wise?
Beach technology companies, things for innovations for the beach. So like Swimways, for example, Swimways was from here. That's a water company, right? Water-related toys and stuff. So. There is a little bit of that, I think, one of the reasons that we don't see a ton of it is because there's, again, that notion that there's like wide space and not a lot of density, and every area has sort of their own personality, and I think that that's something to celebrate. That's one of the reasons that I started Made in 757, because you really don't know what exists here until you start to look for those small people building the small things that they're passionate about.
And I think just to piggyback on that one little bit more time, but is an area can't create what people don't want to create.
Right.
Right.
You can't force an industry or a sector on people if that's not their thing.
But I guess you can embrace and get behind some of the things that they're there. Like I recall like 2013, 2014, just like any other city in the country, the brew scene was really getting big. And I was like, why aren't we embracing this? And people were like, this is just alcohol. And I'm just like, this could be the thing. And you guys aren't even embracing this thing, even though it's kind of happening naturally. I would always say like, oh, a brewery is like the coffee shop. And I'm sure it's like that in every other city across the country, but it was like, push that. And we don't even push that. So it's like, get behind that. And so it's exciting to see something with like Made in 757.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the problems that I am not shy about admitting that I have living here is that I find it hard to connect because I'm not from here. I wasn't born and raised here. And so this is, one of my efforts to kind of like throw down roots and really build something that forces me to be connected to the ground. As opposed to like trying to grow and climb some ladder in some tech company, I'm really like going the opposite direction, trying to like spread my roots so I can be tethered here. And that experiment has led me to just uncover so many cool artisans and makers and people. And every day, I mean, Instagram is, it's a business tool for me, but it's a business tool for a lot of other people. And I just keep finding every single day people who are running their Instagram e-commerce, mashups for things that they're doing, their artwork, their sculptures, their cool pieces of, their fabrication things that they provide and sell to other makers that are not local. So it's a very neat sort of micro, I guess, field.
Yeah, and that even extends beyond to like swimways. That was a super quiet secret that not a lot of people really knew about. That they were a global company, and then they were acquired by a company in Toronto. But I mean, they were really, really big. And it seems like the same holds true for what you discovered here, in the sense that there's so many companies that are doing great things, but they just quietly do them, and they're not looking for
notoriety.
Exactly. And it's so like, do you know any off the top of your head that stand out? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
from the area, of the Made in 757 vendors or others?
Yeah, of Made in 757.
Well, so a couple of people that have like jumped on as vendors. There's a guy named Tim Dooley who he'll probably be happy that I gave him a shout out, but he hasn't actually finished setting up his store yet, so I'm kind of calling him out. But he makes these really neat retro lamps, and he uses upcycled material. So he takes like mixologist stuff like cocktail mixers and bottles and vases and pitchers and things like that, and he turns them into lamps. And they're just very unique, and no two are the same. And that's one that I really enjoy, like looking at his stuff. There's a guy named Jeremy. I'm blanking on his last name, but he used to run a wood shop that was kind of like a collaborative wood shop in Newport News, and he still has it, Burled and Knotted. So he makes these awesome woodworking items, and he's just really talented, with woodworking. And I think we've got all kinds of people who are hands-on with their materials, and they're really excellent craftsmen and women. And I think that it's easy when you think about entrepreneurship, it's easy to like immediately go to the tech startup, but we don't consider that somebody who's building, Jeremy Knight, thank you, but we don't consider that people who build these things with their hands and take a risk and decide to try and sell something that maybe is different already have that entrepreneurship gene or that desire to put themselves out there and take a risk doing something that other people aren't doing. And I think what?
We used to do that.
We used to do what?
We used to embrace, the tinkerers of the world and things like
Yeah.
that. And so at some point it changed. I don't know.
We glorify this like guy writing code behind a desk. And there's not just one way to build a business, right? I mean, who knows if something like those lamps or very specialty woodworking or anything, a jewelry company, for example. I mean, we've got a ton of jewelers on Made in 757. What if one of those jewelers has a really cool special process that they do and that becomes like a luxury brand, right? So there's just potential across the board. And I think I jive with the creatives because I tinker in doing things myself. And for a long time, I sort of kept that as a hobby, but now I'm like basically joking that I've built myself my own like craft fair. So
you talked about how connecting was something that's difficult for you, or was difficult for you, and it's something that you've been doing. I think you said from the top down or something like that. I used a specific wording. What was so difficult about that, and how have you been able to get in front of people that you didn't know before? I mean, is it just using Instagram, or is there, is the Marla IP somewhere special in there that's
yeah, I don't know. For a long time I felt like I was somebody told me a joke when I first got down here. They were like, are you a Yankee or are you a damn Yankee? And I was like, what's the difference, right? The joke. Okay, well, a Yankee is somebody from the North who comes to the South, and a damn Yankee is someone that stays. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm a damn Yankee. It's different culturally. Like I talk faster. I still have a 917 area code on my phone. I haven't changed to the 757 as much as that's, my brand now, right? So I don't know. It's just connecting here. I have to kind of learn the pace of life and start to appreciate that, we are a large network of suburban communities, and there isn't really that like downtown. There's a couple of little downtown pockets in different cities, but it's just a different feeling. So with Made in 757, the idea of like that marketplace concept, right? But it's local. So we don't have a dense urban core that has really cool stores and businesses and all kinds of stuff. We have a few of them. Here is like an online version of that kind of marketplace. And it's going to be expanding from handmade goods very soon to include things that are more cultural experiences, like musicians can sell their MP3s if they're independent musicians, or poets can sell literature. People who are writers can sell their ebooks. If you run a very interesting experience that's bookable, you can put that on the site too. And it's all that sort of local discovery marketplace element.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's really interesting is, so as I'm listening to this, you, Zack, myself, we're all transplants. And I to this day, I've been here 20 years now. And it's like, to this day, people ask me if I'm from here. And I still don't know how to answer that question, because is this guaranteed? If I say, yes, I am, then they're going to say, oh, well, and I've been here for 20 years. Oh, well, then you're not from here. And
right, at what point?
Yeah.
It was like that when I lived in New York too, though. I lived in New York for almost 7 years, and it was like that too, because I wasn't from New York. 7 years is not a long time, but it's a long time. And, there were people who moved to New York. I mean, everybody moves to New York. There are a lot of people who are from there, but in New York City, even so, it's like, were you born in New York or were you not? And I'm like, the only place that I was actually from is Philadelphia. So, and I'm not living there.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's one of these deals where, is it some of the people that have been born and raised here that are holding on and they don't want things to change and progress. And then we have us damn Yankees that are trying to move things forward. So like there's a clash between that. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I think that cross-pollination is inevitable, and people move. People are migratory. So I think that, yes, we can put down roots wherever we are, but we can also transplant ourselves. And it would be silly to not recognize that this area is made stronger by people who are both local and who come from outside, bringing different perspectives, and everything shapes the uniqueness of our region. So it's not just about like this Southern coastal culture. I mean, that's a big part of Hampton Roads, but it's also like, how can we take that Southern coastal culture and infuse it with really interesting things that people get ideas from other places, and do it in a different way, right?
Can we have the talk about the name of the area?
What it should be.
Well, I think it's interesting just because you.
I've already used like all of the names.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at. And I wasn't actually going to ask this question, but then I was like, you know what? Let's play today. Like, let's have some fun. Let's go to a party. Like, it's interesting. Funny story, because you guys talked about Start Peninsula is how you guys had met. Like, my thought of having Start Norfolk was a regional event because Norfolk was an area that people knew outside of the area. People want to push back at that and say it's one city, it can't be anything like that. And actually, it's funny. I found this in a box the other day.
I almost wore my Start Norfolk shirt.
So it wasn't about being one city, instead of that. It was like, no, this is a regional thing. And then people decide that because it was just, Norfolk was in the name that, if you live in Chesapeake, you can't come. I'm like, it has nothing to do with that. Like, I'm just looking at this from an outside perspective. If you go to New York City and you say, oh, I'm from Hampton Roads, they're going to say, well, where the hell is that?
Yeah.
Right.
It's 3 hours south of DC. Like, that's the reference point.
That's usually what I say. And so there seems to be some sort of big push. It's now in the name of your business, 757. Is that just a marketing thing? Like, but because, and the reason I ask is because you did use other vernaculars recently, monikers, in some of your stuff. Like, what do you say? Does it matter?
So I'm an equal opportunist brander person. So I use in my marketing materials specifically when it comes to marketing, I try to hit every term that could be used to describe this area. You'll see on like the 757 Day website that it says in the opening paragraph, it uses like every single name for the place. And that's because there are people who are very tied to their name of the region. The only thing I didn't use is Tidewater because I think that's just falling out of fashion, even though a lot of the legacy businesses have Tidewater in them in some way. But the naming thing is very interesting. From what I understand, Hampton Roads has Hampton in it because Hampton wouldn't agree to a regional name if they weren't in it. And, the roads is a nautical term. So I think Hampton Roads is a really nice name, but there has no brand recognition. Now, 757, from everything that we're reading about the branding initiative and the sort of like sports world, right? They'd say that 757 is recognized outside of the area as its own region. If you put in hashtag 757 whatever, you get a lot of responses. So it's used a lot. But it's also an aircraft. So you get a lot of pictures of airplanes too if you look for 757. Which isn't a bad thing for our region, right? Because we have a lot of aviation here. So it's really interesting, this notion of like, what is the identity of Hampton Roads? And I think there's a lot of organizations, or particularly, the Alliance right now and 757 Proud, trying to put out there do this branding push for the region.
Do you think we're getting somewhere?
I don't know. So with Made in 757, I called it that because I think it sounds cool. But my goal for that company long term is not to be just a Hampton Roads company, but to also take this sort of local discovery marketplace concept and try to franchise it out to other sort of smaller places and in a way become an Etsy competitor without actually being Etsy, because Etsy is trying to be everything to everybody. But if you focus on your local community, then you really activate those local makers, and people like to go to craft fairs and buy from people that live next door to them and that kind of thing. So, that's the larger concept. I think Hampton Roads, starting in the 757, calling it Made in 757 is just this first node, but it's 757 for a reason, right? 757 is that, amorphous blob that sometimes contains 7 localities, sometimes contains 13.
Yeah, it depends on the day, right?
Right.
Does it even matter?
It could be a mega region, right, up to Richmond. I mean, the 757-804.
It's a long phone number. Does it matter? Does the moniker matter? Does any of these things matter? I mean, you're a marketing person. Are we just, is it a fight that's stupid, or does it matter in the end of the day?
I don't know. I don't know if it matters. I can't
It
answer.
Seems like it's the biggest fight that people have.
Right, but they're directing their energy towards something which, instead of sort of creating, this is that top-down, bottom-up thing, right? Instead of creating an identity and bestowing it upon a region, like look for it from the people who are here and capture what's here. And I think the 757 is doing that more than the Hampton Roads is doing that, or more than Chesapeake, or more than coastal Virginia. Coastal Virginia feels very like I mean, I'm sorry, because I know that the magazine is named this for a reason, but it feels very much like it's a magazine like Luxury Lifestyles type of name. I know, that's what I'm saying. So, and that's not to badmouth Coastal Virginia as a name, because it is descriptive. It says what it is. So every one of them has benefits. Coastal Virginia, Hampton Roads, the 757, Tidewater.
I think that the interesting thing with this is, and I know I don't want this to be taken out of context, and I know inevitably it will, because people are just going to chop sound bites or whatever, but we've transitioned ourselves from a point where maybe 20 years ago, whatever the number is, businesses invested in the next generation of businesses. And then slowly, local governments then started taking on that role of economic development. And now, if you look at like the funding sources of a lot of chambers, it comes from local government. And then if they're the ones that are contributing, then they have a vote, or they have a say-so in what's being discussed, the direction moving forward. And we really, in my opinion, we need to transition away from that and change the mentality of this area, in the sense of, hey, if there's a merger or an acquisition, if you go public, you have to reinvest in the community. Give 1% to a fund so that we can then, the businesses are investing into one another. I mean, if you look at, like, we tried doing something forever as a region, nothing ever happened. Pharrell comes to town, he just makes it happen in an instant. Because he doesn't need anyone else's money. He doesn't need cooperation from anybody.
Right.
And the next thing you know, with something in the water, I don't know what Virginia Beach contributed to it from
I think they were presented with this amazing package, and they were like, yes, please. Like, how could you say no?
Right. And we have to come together as a group, and say, look, we're grateful you set the stage to do this. We couldn't have done it without your initial support, but now we got to start being more and more self-sufficient and reinvesting in one another.
Well, I think it would be one thing if he lived here, right? And now we know Missy Elliott still has property here in Portsmouth. I know that because my cousin services her fish tanks. So, like, there are people who have, who are, big names who are still here. I think Wanda Sykes was from Portsmouth. I don't know if she still lives around here, but there's a lot of really amazing cultural icons that have come from this area. Allen Iverson, the Wire. You guys know The Wire? This is one that I found out recently. You ever watch the series The Wire?
It takes place in Baltimore.
Detective Kima. She went to Warwick High School in Newport News.
Well, John Locke lives here from Lost.
What?
John Locke from Lost lives here.
Okay, so
Bob Saget lives
famous
here.
people
Vic. I mean, there's plenty of people.
We've got plenty of famous people in this area. Maybe there's something about this area that makes them want to blend in and not stand out and use their cultural power to change things, or maybe it's calm and it's relaxing, and that's a vibe that we need to harness, right? That you come to Hampton Roads to blend in. I don't know.
It's so interesting you say that. We just rattled off all these people that are okay with this kind of being in the background doing their thing, but one of the most interesting topics or things that Brad Feld talked about when he did his talk was how this can't be something that's a hierarchy. And it's like, we just all have to work together, and it can't be just one person or one organization that makes all this stuff happen.
Well, another example is, I think in Detroit, or Where is QuickBooks from? Somebody find out where Quicken the company.
Cleveland.
Cleveland, I thought it was like Detroit area.
They have naming rights to the stadium, so that's why I figured.
Anyway, the founder of Quicken reinvested and built this super block in his downtown. Kind of similar to what's going on now in Norfolk.
Or Vegas. And
what?
Tony Shea in Vegas, in downtown Vegas.
Yeah, so they've had these like local hometown heroes come back and reinvest, but they live here and they reinvested. And so like we do have Grow, please, why am I forgetting his name? With 757's with the
startups
assembly. Thank you.
Assembly.
Yeah, so I mean that's going to be a really cool feature, focal point, whatever. But it's difficult because we still don't have the other infrastructure that brings people to that point. And you know, without going on a tangent about local transit and transportation options and all of that kind of stuff, I mean, we're still a disparate group of places where people have to take a car 45 minutes to get from one place to the other, and it is difficult to cross-pollinate when you don't want to sit in traffic for a half an hour to do it. So take that.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, so then we kind of go full circle where Made in 757, it's online, people can contribute, buy and sell.
Exactly.
So everything works around.
So with COVID hitting and things being online, do you think things have improved in that? Do you think that's something that we can get ahead? Do you think we got behind? Where were you connected with people over the last 15, 16 months? Because I mean, it seems like I look at stuff as, okay, there's a challenge, right? How do we fix that challenge? Did COVID actually accelerate this in a positive way because you were able to meet with all these people where maybe before you couldn't because you were stuck in traffic or whatever?
So I actually started this business because of COVID. And I shut down my last business because of COVID. So I had a startup that I had been working on up until last March. I was, March, the beginning of the closures, I was about to launch into healthcare. And I couldn't sell anything to healthcare in March of 2020. Like that would have been impossible. So I had to put everything on hold and stop and reassess. And then I tried to pivot in the fall of 2020 and the pivot didn't pan out. And so I basically shut down my company as of November 1st. And then I had been seeing chatter in these groups that I'm a part of. I'm in a group called Handmade Hampton Roads because, like I said, I'm a hobbyist crafter, and a lot of people were talking about craft fairs and where were they selling their stuff now, and they hated Etsy and this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, hey, if I build a local marketplace for handmade goods, would you guys sign up and sell your stuff? And I got a ton of comments, and a ton of people were like, yes, please, I would absolutely list my stuff there. And in December, we had over 100 vendors already, and I had just started the week before Thanksgiving. So now we're up to 200 vendors, and we have over 1,000 products listed, and we're launching in new categories. And I've gotten the side of marketplaces are difficult, right? Because they're two-sided issues. You've got to get the customer side and you've got to get the vendor side. And so I've been doing a lot of work with the vendor side because that's the first piece that just it happened, right? And now I'm working on the customer side, trying to provide more things to get customers up and running, doing a little bit more marketing promotions, stuff like that. So
is that where 757 Day pops in because they're more the customer side of it?
Well, sort of. Okay. So I was dreaming about marketing things for Made in 757, and I was in the shower where sometimes I do my best thinking. And it was probably midnight or 1 a.m. because I'm a night owl, and I, whatever it was. And I'm just like, what am I going to do for marketing, And what if there was a 757 Day? That would be cool. And then I was like, wait a minute. It took me 5 seconds to get from thinking of the idea to being like, no, this can't be a Made in 757 thing. This has to be much bigger than Made in 757, because 757 Day could be a catalyst for a lot of the things that we've talked about, which is regional unity, celebrating local culture, celebrating the people who have made it from this area, basically anything that celebrates Hampton Roads, Coastal Virginia, whatever you want to call it. By the way, hamptonroadsday.com also goes to the same website. So if you're wondering about branding, I picked both of them, but 757 is leading the pack. So yeah, 757 Day that's the goal. And Made in 757 is sponsoring it because, it's me. But it's really much bigger than me. It's for everybody. It's for anybody to do whatever you want with on July 1st. Celebrate what you love about this area. Be proud of it. Put it out there. Hashtag it.
How did you narrow down July 1st?
So July 1st is the day when the area code 757 split off from 804. In 1996. I think it was.
Didn't Columbus get here or something, like in Jamestown? Was it Columbus that reached here?
No, the first people that reached here.
Yeah.
I don't.
They always broadcast that something.
There's a ton of history. Forget there's
this area sucks at marketing.
In this area, there's a ton to celebrate, and the more that I uncover, the more I keep digging. You guys had Oz Mikan-Sasso on a little while ago, and I know that she has told me a lot about Black entrepreneurship in Hampton Roads and how there used to be a Black Wall Street in the Dismal Swamp area, and there's just so much stuff. There's layers and layers of history to uncover here.
Wow. Well, can we unpack a couple of things that you said that I don't want to overlook? So you decided to close a business. I want to know how you came to that decision to do that. And then you also, that could be like a 10-minute snippet in itself, but then also be thinking about, you talked about how you kind of did some customer feedback where you just posted on, some sort of Slack group or something like that, some sort of community group.
Yeah.
And you asked them a question. And how do you really understand or validate that kind of data point to know that, hey, I should start a business or not off of something like that? Because I think that can be a pretty, it can be a scary thing to get feedback when you don't really know, are these people for real or not?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of the lean startup methodology, and I kind of live that and breathe that. I'm falling a little bit out of fashion with the fail fast concept, because I think that slow entrepreneurship is also valid and important. I think people can take years to build a solid company, and you don't have to kill yourself doing it. But that being said, the lean startup is all about, the build, test, iterate cycle. And when my company wasn't going to work because there was a pandemic and I couldn't sell to healthcare, I had to put everything on hold. And also I had no childcare. So I had to stay home and I couldn't do anything. I literally was stuck and I was resentful and I hated it. And it was an awful 5 months until July came around, and the pressure to do something just built up so much that I pivoted to take the core technology that I was building and turn it into something else. All the while, even before the pandemic, I had been searching for insurance to cover this specific risk. And the risk involved children and childcare, and not childcare locations. So not in a daycare center. And no insurance companies wanted to cover me. And this was the death of my company. Because as much as I could get traction or couldn't get traction, or was pivoting to a new business model, because my core technology was basically offering childcare without a building, and I could not get childcare coverage because the insurance industry they were unable to wrap their hands around the risk. They were like, well, what's your permanent location? I'm like, I don't have a permanent location. I'm enabling childcare. I am building a system, a structure, a technology platform. And we're bringing the caregivers together with the people who want to hold the care in their location. And so was
that the co-working thing at the YMCA?
It started as co-working, and then it grew from an idea to do co-working with childcare to a platform for co-working with childcare. And then we dropped the co-working, and then I had a founder split. Oz and I split, and so we had to deal with that whole thing, which is emotional and trying, all that. And then I picked it back up, took the technology, and rebuilt into this. I was gonna go to healthcare after doing some research and doing some polling and testing of end users. And but long story short, from when we started in 2018 till when I shut it down in November 2020, insurance was the sort of thing that I could not get. So I did not feel comfortable doing anything with kids if I didn't have coverage for, somebody's randy uncle or some, nefarious person walking into a building. And I tried. I mean, I had quotes, not quotes. I had like applications out to, 10 different companies. I had agents in all part of the country working for me, trying to find coverage, and just kept getting no's. So at some point I had said I had to call a spade, and that was that.
Yeah, one thing that I've said for a long time about this area is that we have to embrace failure and not like look at somebody that they're totally strange and a failure if someone decides to shut a business down. What was your experience when you shut it down? Did people treat you differently or look at you differently?
So by the pivot, which was like a last ditch effort to save it, and I had a local insurance agent that I was trying to work with, and another guy who had gotten insurance for Lyft, like the agent that had found insurance for Lyft, which, if you can imagine, is a pretty risky business model at first. So he understood it, but I had this local person and I had this guy in Chicago, and neither one was coming back to me. And at a certain point, I was getting ghosted. Like I would write an email being like, "Hey, any news?" and no response for like a week, 2 weeks. And so it was just a couple of months of that where I just started to lose steam. I started to lose like the oomph to keep going. And so October rolled around and I was like, if I can't start this by October, then I'm going to start winding down affairs. And I set November 1st as the day that I would officially stop working on it. And it was just kind of like a slow, like it just ended. I stopped pursuing it, and put up a thing on the website saying that, as of November 1st, I'm no longer operating, but I didn't officially close the company until February of this year. That was just because of logistics.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we talk about, at least I talk about when I help people with their pitches, is the fact that, hey, if you're trying to get an investment from somebody, they're betting on you, the person, not necessarily the idea. And the same holds true when you shut a business down. It's not you as a person didn't fail. It just wasn't the right idea, or it wasn't solving the right problem, or whatever the case is. And, you still have
I'm still me.
Yeah, and so it's like you can't be, it's just, again, it should be, you have to try.
It was a bit of a relief, it was a bit of a relief
right.
to say like, well, I don't have to have this headache anymore of trying to find a needle in a haystack insurance coverage, and also, worry about if it was always a constant question, do I run a pilot and not have insurance? What do I do? Like, because I had people waiting. I had customers waiting, and I had caregivers that I had hired, that I had interviewed, and they were waiting, and I wanted to run a pilot, but I did not feel comfortable actually saying we're going to do a pilot from this day to this day, or we're going to start providing care from this day to this day, without any kind of coverage. So it was just like, I'm sorry, I can't do this for you guys because I don't feel safe doing it.
Awesome. I want to switch topics over to the community creator fund. That's also, you got a lot going on. You stay pretty busy.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about what you have going on with that.
Yeah. So back to 757 Day. So as this holiday is sort of an amorphous blob for the shaping of whoever wants to shape it, Oz, again, who, by the way, I met at Start Peninsula in 2014. So she and I have long, for many years, I mean, we started the company together and then we split apart, and then now she's in the Techstars role, and, we stay in touch. We're still good friends. And she, saw what I was doing with 757 Day and was like, I have this idea to fund some opportunities, like there's these community creators funds where it's just trying to create more people, give people that first little push to try something new. And so we decided to do it as an opportunity for 757 Day, to announce it on 757 Day, because why not, right? That's the perfect opportunity to announce it. So this is, it's called the 757 Community Creators Fund, and it is up to $1,000 in cash for any idea that contributes positively to the culture, the community, the density of Hampton Roads. So people are submitting their applications right now. They close on the 31st, which is like 3 days. But really, it's open to anything that is cool or different.
And that's just some pre-seed funding, like micro pre-seed.
I'm not exactly clear on how Oz is doing the funding. I believe it's actually just like a Visa gift card.
Fat stacks of cash.
Yeah, I mean, it's not seed funding. There's no contract. There's no like,
Gotcha.
It's like you could come up with an idea for an event. We're going to help you get that event off the ground. You have an initiative. We're going to help you get that initiative off the ground. You have an idea. We want to help you test it, right? So here's just some really, easy money, but we want to know, there's some criteria, but we're very like forgiving with it. We want to know that you know what you're going to do with it. We want to know that you've thought through this idea. We want to know that it's going to have an impact on the local culture, community, and density in Hampton Roads. As part of her role with Techstars, it's cultivating the ecosystem here. So this is something that aligns really well with that, is because if we give people who are willing to take a risk trying something new a little bit of fire underneath them to take that risk, give them a little bit of a cushion, then they will they will do it, and maybe one of those ideas will become the next big thing, right?
So are you going to announce the winners then on 757 Day?
Yeah, so at the official virtual event of 757 Day, we will announce the 5 winners of the project. And actually, I believe that this may go on beyond 757 Day, that the 757 Community Creators Fund is something that is going to happen again, not necessarily under the auspices of 757 Day. So we're just using that as the kind of launch pad for it.
So business aside, what's 2020 been like for you? What's 2021 been like for you? Like how did you emotionally get through this? You started a business that I think is because you wanted to help, but then also be around people again. Like you seem like a people person from the times that I've met you, talked with you, whatever the right word is. But yeah, I mean, what's the role been like in that?
I have transformed into a recluse. I have a wonderful therapist. I honestly think that, if anything has been clear, it's that having people to talk to, friends, confidants, my husband, like talking to the same person every single day and only them, and especially if 2 of them are under 4 years old, is really, really hard. So having people that are outside of your home base is really important. That's definitely been highlighted by the pandemic, and 2020 was, I've enjoyed being home. There are a lot of things that I appreciate now. I mean, we were pretty careful because we have some high risk family members. So, but yeah, it's been a hard year. But also when you're put in a place where things can be pretty dismal or bleak, that's where I get a lot of my inspiration and creativity. I mean, I'm one of these people that I firmly believe things have to go bad in order for them to go good. Like things have to go bad, or you have to be tested in order to like, when you're at the bottom, when you're at that pit of despair, that's when I get activated. And I'm not saying I was at the pit of despair like the whole year, but there were definite moments, especially the first like couple of months that we were staying home. I was having some like flashbacks to September 11th because there was this air of uncertainty and sort of like what's going on. And I should qualify this by saying that I was in New York on September 11th, and I watched the plane fly into the second tower. I heard the first one crash, and I was very close. So I was actually like having a lot of like flashbacks of this, and it thankfully I had just started to see this therapist, and so she kind of put all that into context, that like when you're going through a trauma, other traumas come up. So I think this was a big thing for me, and I talk about it openly because it can happen to anybody. I mean, it was a hard year for a lot of people. And I think we're only going to start to see the results of that. For me, I get creative. For me, I come up with ideas, which is one of the reasons why I have like 3 things running at the same time at any moment. But, for other people, they may pour into their work, or they may pour into their family, or whatever it is, whatever fills them back up. But it was an interesting year.
Do you think, with that being said, I feel like, the 2010 to 2015 timeframe, America really pushed entrepreneurship as a thing. I feel like that buzzword has really gone away. Personally, I don't see it as much as we used to see it.
It's become ubiquitous now.
So do you think that's something that then needs to be marketed back then? I mean, you think it's ubiquitous as in it's just a natural thing that people are doing? Because
I think the awareness level of the average American on starting a business is much, much higher than it was, 10 to 15 years ago.
When we were growing up as kids, was that something that wasn't
taught? I mean, you always glorified the entrepreneur, right? Like, oh, the Bill Gates. Oh, the Steve Jobs, right? Like, you glorified these people who built these massive companies, the HP team, right? Hewlett Packard. So those guys were glorified, and it was seen as like something that's kind of hard to do, or something that's like only in Silicon Valley or wherever. And I think we've really gotten to the point, at least, I mean, this is me and I'm in it. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little skewed, but we see that 1, it can be done anywhere. 2, the barriers to entry are really low. Anybody can buy a domain and start a website. We've got a million different services now to do that. And it's just easy. It's really easy to test an idea. What's not ubiquitous is the gumption to actually take that risk. And I think the risk-taking behavior is something that we could still cultivate. But the idea of like what it takes to start a business, it's like if somebody's like, I don't even know what to do. Well, you're like, well, would you do it if I could tell you how to do it? And then if they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And if you break down how easy it is to start a business, then I think it's like a no-brainer. It's just there for the taking.
I think the one thing that you've demonstrated just on the last 50-something minutes that we've been talking is that you've let on that you've been knocked down a couple times, but you continue to get back up, and you continue to come up with new ideas. And there's nothing that keeps you down. You felt like you weren't necessarily accepted as a transplant, but you keep on going. So, I mean, that's a really, really big thing with entrepreneurship. So
yeah, it doesn't matter that you fell down. It matters that you get back up, right?
Yeah.
Just like the Chumbawamba song, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Yeah. Random. Do you guys know there's like a meme going around now that if you scream like peaches come from a can? Have you guys seen this meme?
Like Presidents of the United States of America.
Thank you. But that's how you can tell an older millennial from the younger ones. Because if you randomly scream peaches come from a can, and like people
they were put there by a man.
Thank you. That this is a thing. So the Chumbawamba just reminded me of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard that this morning on when I was listening to a podcast while running. They were like, Smashing Pumpkins, do you like them? Or is it cool music or not? And that will determine, another thing about how old you are. So Smashing Pumpkins is dad music.
What's the answer, cool or not?
Well, for me, it was cool because that's the era that I grew up in.
Yeah, same.
You know the guy who, Billy Corbin, is... he owns a wrestling outfit.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did.
He's trying to be the next Vince McMahon.
Always got to bring it back to wrestling, Zack.
I didn't know that. Actually, I was informed of that a few years ago, so it was interesting to see. All right, so let's give this the old wrapperoo. So 757 day, July 1. If it goes good or bad, no matter what, you're doing it again in the future?
Next year would officially be the 25th anniversary of the 757 moniker. So I think this is like the test year, and my goal with it would be to have every municipality sign a proclamation that they officially establish July 1st as Hampton Roads Day or 757 Day or both of them. and that they do something. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could just be like, hey, it's 757 Day. Let's celebrate our contributions to this local region.
What's the pushback been on that? I mean, it seems like
What's
it's
the push? There's no negative.
Yeah.
There's literally no negative to celebrating our region.
So are people pushing back, or it just hasn't gone to that?
No,
point?
everybody's like, wow, this is an amazing idea. And I am not like trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but it was such a like stupidly small idea to create a holiday for the area.
It only
unique to the area.
Well, I've
took
said
us 400 years to figure it out. Nice job, Marla.
Well, I've said, why don't we have the world's largest Veterans Day parade if we have so many veterans, right? I still have not been able. Why does New York have to have it? Why can't it be here? Who knows? If someone was,
so that's one thing. Well, wait, before I want to finish on 757 Day, because there's something else that people can do to celebrate, and that is celebration kits. So if you go to 757day.com/ I think it's celebration kits. I know you guys will pull up the link in a second. I am assembling 100 kits. Some of the items in those kits have been donated, and they're going to be all different stuff, like a couple of stickers, some beach balls, some cool little things. There's some virtual discounts and promo codes that local businesses are starting to send me. I'm looking for other people to send me inclusions for the virtual celebration kits. If you're a local business, you could offer a $7.57 special. You could offer a 7.57% discount. If you do something that's more expensive, $757 deal, whatever. So there's just like endless opportunities to get in front as a sponsor. But the celebration kits themselves are going to be like physical, tangible items that you can take pictures with and celebrate the day with. And we're only making 100. Once I get 100 people signed up, there's no more kits.
Something to piggyback off that Tim said a few weeks ago when we had Hub's Peanuts on, is when these companies are buying swag for whatever reason, right? How many of these companies, right? This is just like an aha moment for people to think about. How many of these companies are buying something that actually isn't from their area that could be bought in their area, right?
Can I tell you how hard it is for me to find printed products? And I know there are print shops here, plenty of them. But I've looked for stickers that are competitive, like local vinyl stickers and stuff. I've looked for, all kinds of swag, right? Beach balls. I want to print beach balls. Why doesn't Virginia Beach have a beach ball printing company?
Is it Imprint for you?
Are they local?
Virginia? I think they're Virginia Beach.
Okay, that's great, because I'll use them. I want to use local companies when I can, but right now I've got an order sitting in a cart. I mean, made in 757, like I've sourced stuff from my vendors as well. I ask them, I'm like, hey, can you do this? But for larger runs, it's a little bit hard. Like somebody's got a Cricut sitting in their art room and they're not going to print out,
I think it's just something that people haven't thought about that they need. Because Marshall from Hub's Peanuts, it's like, oh, we want these peanuts to go out to other places. And Tim says, well, I don't understand why people who buy stuff like this for other people aren't buying your, jar of peanuts to send out for your swag bags. And it's just, it's just an idea that people can say, hey, you already have the budget for this.
Yeah, just spend it here. Well, that's what I'm doing with the, so we did a call for artwork with Made in 757 to create 757 goods. And I've got 5 designs that we've picked, and those are going to get printed on a range of materials. There's going to be tote bags and shirts and some other things that will get out. I'm getting temporary tattoos made. So, there's just some cool stuff that's going to get put out, and some of it will be made locally, some of it won't be because of, again, the sourcing issues, but I'm trying to get it as local as possible, and I'd love to only do local if I can.
Share with us. I'm sure there's a hashtag. Is it hashtag 757 Day?
Yeah, I mean, we're on Instagram too. I mean, both of them. But yes, and there's an official Facebook event that you can join, and that will be how we share the link for the actual official event on July 1st to announce the Community Creator Fund winners.
Go check out 757day.com. Marla, appreciate your time and looking forward to seeing this thing at the 25th anniversary, the 26th anniversary, the 45th anniversary, and all that craziness. So kudos to you for pushing this out. And yeah, this has been gnarly.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, Marla. That was
Good to
awesome.
see you guys.
We'll see you in the flesh soon. I think. I think we're allowed to leave our houses now. I'm still not sure.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Y'all have a great day. See you soon. Peace.
Bye.